Hey guys, how's it going? Jovan, Hutton, Pulitzer here. Listen, when I get ready for these broadcasts, an interesting thing, as soon as I set them up, but I haven't even clicked go live yet, those of you on YouTube, actually, for some reason, they start showing it in the stream. So I don't know how that works. So as I'm just getting the elements set up, which you have to get into where you're going to broadcast before you go live so you can set the elements up in this program. It basically starts running. And so I'm doing a program this morning. I got to change a few little banners, right? So give me a moment, okay? Coup d'etat, that's what we're going to be talking about, right? And it's really interesting, right? Of what is a coup? What is a coup d'etat? And that's what we're going to be talking about today. I'm going to go to my screen real quick, and I want to just give you the definition first, because it's important people understand the definition of a coup, and I think there's a lot of misunderstanding on what a coup is. So let's go to the definition first. And by the way, don't freak out when you hear me typing in the background as I do this. But a coup d'etat, right, is basically also called a coup, a sudden violent overthrow of an existing government. We're going to talk about the differences in these things and what are you really seeing. Now, in political science term, right, the term coup refers to the illegitimate, that's the key, illegitimate overthrow of a sitting government, usually through violence or threat of violence. Now, one of the chief requisites of a coup is control of all or part of the armed forces, the police, and other military elements. Now, there's a difference. Unlike a revolution, which is usually achieved by specific political group, large numbers of people working for basic social, economic, and or political change, a coup is a change in power from the top that merely results in an abrupt replacement of leading government personnel. Leading government personnel. That's key, right? And you have to understand that there are many different subtle nuances in this whole business of what is a coup, right? And how does a coup work? And is a coup really going on? And that's what we're going to be talking about in this broadcast, because that's what's important. I'm going to show you some video. I'm going to give you some facts, right, throughout history, right? And the question, you're right, who is actually committing the coup? Is this a coup? Is this a controlled coup? Is this a self-coup? Is this a coup within a coup? Is this a coup? That's what we're going to be talking about today. And somebody just said something really interesting. I read a warrant was, hang on. Warrant of issue to the president, unsure if anything came of it. I haven't heard that, but that's not the one I wanted to click. These move so fast. Where are you finding this? But look at warrant, I can't find any. Okay, so I'm trying to decipher the rhetoric and whatever for you, but this particular topic is, what is a coup? When have coups happened before? What constitutes a coup, right? Etc. Now, first, let's just start with a little bit of deciphering. In very specific definition terms, a coup, right, is when military forces become involved to change a government or make something happen at the top government overall level. Now, you have to ask yourself a few things. Can a sitting president commit a coup? That's one interesting question, because we still have a sitting president. Can a president that's gone out of power do a coup? That's called a self-coup. Can a coup happened if the democratic process wasn't followed? Would that be the definition of a coup? It's certainly the definition of treason. And I think this is where people get confused. So first, let's look at this historically, because if you don't look at things historically, you might not have a filter that helps you understand what is really a coup, what really is a takeover, what is sedition, what is treason. So let's jump back to history. And I want you to pay attention to the countries predominantly where coups occur. That's what we'll cover first. By the way, share this on your wall, share it to your friends, let them do it. I think just a lot of people need to have understanding, okay, what is all this stuff and what does it mean? And coup sometimes is being thrown around really inappropriately sometimes. Let's go here. Okay, so here's a coup d'etat, right? And coup d'etat is just the French word. That's when people really gave it the label. But let's look at a list of coups and coup attempts. And this has been, and this is chronological, okay? But this has been around, okay, since the BCs. The first one you're seeing here is the military commander of Israel kills the king, and it goes on. And it goes on to Judah, and then it goes on to Damascus, and it just keeps on happening out time. Now, a lot of this are different dynasties or different political groups, okay? So you will find in history the preponderance of these things are groups of people, usually already in government, right, that are political parties rivaling each other, and then one political party tries to overthrow a different political party. Now, I'm going to show you in real time how fast in the modern world these definitions changed, and they're used for no good to control your mind. In fact, I probably, let me just show you that right now. Let me stop sharing this particular screen. Okay, and let me make sure I've got the right one. Hang on one second. Here we go. Let me just make sure I've got the right one. Okay, great. And so, yeah, I'm going to show you this because it's really important. This is critically important because I'm going to give you a historic view, and I want you to understand what it's meant in history, what it means right now, because it's changing right before your eyes in the digital world. Is that surprising? No, that's not surprising. Let me share my screen. Okay, I'm gonna make sure I choose the right one. Let me see, did I get it? Here we go. Let's look at these countries, right? Afghanistan, Albania. Look at these countries as I roll by, okay? You will find that a lot of these, a tremendous amount of coups happen in Latin America and happen in Africa. Now, they've happened all over the world, but they're usually very questionable operational countries that have always had a lot of issues with corruption, crime, etc., right? And or just a locked-in ruling class that just stayed there forever. Now, interesting in here, you see number 121, and this is what I'm talking about, history changing right before your eyes. You can click the United States, okay? Now, they say the Revolution of 1719 in South Carolina successfully overthrew the Lord Proprietors, right? Okay, this was, we were under English rule, right? This is definitely before 1776, if you know your history. There was a plan that the Continental Army planned to overthrow the Confederate Congress after George Washington refused to join. So that is understandable. But let's go down here, because I think this is really, I think it's horrendous myself. Okay, this is a brand new edition. Attempts to overthrow the 2020 United States presidential election. Some nonpartisan media organizations have labeled President Donald Trump's false claim to victory in the 2020 United States presidential election and his subsequent legal campaign in state and federal courts and pressure on Republican officials to annul the results of swing states such as Pennsylvania, Georgia, Michigan, Wisconsin, Nevada, Arizona on the basis of disproven voter fraud allegations as a coup attempt, although this labeling remains disputed. Now, as some young, mush-minded, college-age child told me earlier this week, he told me I wasn't a real person because I don't have a Wikipedia. And and I explained to the child that Wikipedia heavily, you don't submit your own Wikipedia. That is not allowed. You can't pay people to do your own Wikipedia. That is not allowed. Where Wikipedia has to be populated by third-party sources and stuff. And unfortunately, as you know, if you've ever looked on Wikipedia, Wikipedia is generally camped out on where if they don't like you, they want to kind of try to make you look bad. And so this child, basically at the Community College of Michigan or something like that, basically told me I wasn't a real person because I didn't have a Wikipedia, right? And so what I want you to understand is part of a coup can also be the use of misinformation by media. And this is, I think, in my book, this should really be, this is left out for judgment right now. Number one, they say it's on basis of disproven voter fraud allegation. At the moment, I don't think any of it's been, the media said disproven, but I would say until the evidence is presented, it hasn't been presented, but until the evidence is presented, etc. Now, what they use to say disproven voter fraud, they use a quote from the Trump loves to win but keeps losing election lawsuits. No, not losing election lawsuits, just basically the evidence hasn't been heard. It's thrown out saying, we don't want to hear it, we don't need to hear it. So it hasn't been proven yet. The next thing they do is a Kansas City opinion article. See it up there? Opinion article. And then the other one basically says PolitiFact, Washington District of Columbia, is this a coup? Okay. And somehow they cite those as three evidence of that this was a coup, right? Then they go on to say the Capitol, the storming of the Capitol, right, was a coup. Again, you have to look at the context as it is. None of these, Mother Jones News and some of these other things, archive stuff that don't even apply. This is how history changes right before your eyes. And so that's why I want you to look at history so you can feed your own brain and you can learn from history what is what. Because please understand, everything that any country is going through right now, especially our country when the world's watching, what you need to do is you need to take some initiative on your own to understand what the facts are. Because quite possibly from both sides of the equation, what you're hearing, what you're seeing, what's being shared is not 100% of the truth. And so what you have to do is try to read and feed your mind a bit of what is a coup, what constitutes a coup, and what is going on. a lot of it begins with mass disruption, many, many times over voting. So let's go back to our list of coups and let's kind of see what happened in those countries. What did it mean then? And try to compare it now. And so a lot of these, as you go through and look, and so this is not new. You have to understand this is not new. Many times it is more than not two different political parties basically saying, I don't like the way you lead, and we're going to revolt. It typically begins with one of the political parties inciting people to violence. And that's a key, meaning they group people together, right? And they get the people behind them, and they get the people basically to say, hey, this isn't right. This isn't what we wanted, or whatever the case may be. But you must understand that as long as there have been people and republics and or whatever, there have been attempts many, many, many times to overthrow people in power for various reasons. It is something that is part and parcel of mankind, and mankind basically wanting a change against things. And so that's the only reason I am showing you these, because most people never go back and just get into the facts of, okay, what is a coup? What did it happen over, etc. The number one theme that you might find in most of these is it largely is where, when the people get involved, they do not feel that they have been represented properly. They feel that law and order has gone out the door, and what would normally be prosecuted or handled by rule of law just goes away. And then that's usually the trigger that allows people in governments or whatever to stage a coup, right? And a coup is not something that happens spontaneously most times. It's usually a very long planned event, very long planned event. I'm going to show you a video. I'm not sure I agree with the beginning images, but that's not why I'm going to show you the video, because the beginning images, because this is a video about coup, again, manipulates history a bit. But I just want you to watch a little bit about history and what are some of the things that have happened coup-wise.
Welcome to WatchMojo.com, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 5 most explosive facts about coup d'etat. For this list,
we're defining a coup as the overthrow of a government by a rival political faction through illegal and typically violent means.
Coups are carried out by one group of elites against another group of elites, so they're distinct from revolutions, invasions, civil wars, and uprisings, even though these all can overlap. And sometimes, life for the common people just goes on as normal. That said, there are always exceptions. Number 5. Coups d'etat are as old as ancient Greece and Rome. They didn't call them coups then, but overthrowing governments is as old as governments themselves. In ancient times, most countries either had kings or were a republic, but sometimes would-be rulers would usurp their own governments with a private army. In Athens, the city was couped by a group of 400 aristocrats who were fed up with democracy. They were replaced in another coup 7 years later by a smaller, scarier group called the 30 Tyrants. Ancient Rome had its fair share of coups too. Julius Caesar came to power in a coup and then was killed in one. Coups continued happening through the Roman Empire, China, Byzantium, Mongolia, and they didn't stop. Famous modern coup leaders like Napoleon, Franco, and Mussolini are part of a venerable heritage of blood-soaked ambition. Number 4. Coups are most common in Latin America and Africa. If Latin America is an apartment, Spain was the worst roommate ever. Even if they left 200 years ago, Spanish forces left a huge mess. Dirty dishes, dust bunnies, and unpaid bills in the form of weak economies, and a legacy of racism and overpowered militaries. After Spain lost control of its mismanaged colonies in the 1820s, the only powerful institution left was the army. And they used that power. Most countries in Latin America have had a coup, and when you've done it once, it can apparently be hard to kick the habit. Case in point, Argentina, which between 1930 and 1976 had a coup every 9 years or so on average. Still, for all Latin America's historical clout, it's the continent of Africa that's the modern pace setter for coups, with over 200 occurring since the 1960s. Number 3. Thailand is very coup-prone. Even today, there are a handful of world leaders who took power by force, but many of them have stabilized and steered towards democracy. And then there's Thailand. It's had 19 coups since 1932, yet only 25 democratic elections. The Thai military chronically tries to clean up government, but is just as incompetent at running the country. Civilian politics is made up of the red and yellow factions, and the poor and the populists versus the middle class and the aristocracy. The two political camps have nothing in common,
and the only peacemakers have been the army and the monarchy. Thailand's last coup was in 2014. In 2019, the coup's leader, Prayut Chan-o-cha, was elected prime minister in what was widely seen as an unfair race.
Number 2. Most coups fail. If all this has been pessimistic, here's some relief. Coups are decreasing in frequency, and most coups fail to make history. Of course, there are some famous failed coups like the Gunpowder Plot. Guy Fawkes dastardly planned to blow up Protestant King James I and replace him with a Catholic. And then there's Adolf Hitler's 1923 beer hall putsch in Munich. Hitler's innovation was to announce to the crowd that the revolution had already begun, and they should join in. Although he was able to lead his revolt to some success, the Nazi militias were soon defeated by police, thus stopping Hitler once and for all. Well, until he ran for election 10 years later and seized control of Germany. But that's another video altogether. Number 1. The US backed 7 coups during the Cold War, that we know of. Sometimes, coups are backed by foreign governments, and when you need help overthrowing a government, no one does it better than the CIA. From 1953 to 1973, the US overthrew the governments of Iran, Guatemala, Congo, the Dominican Republic, South Vietnam, Brazil, and Chile. And that's just what they've admitted to. Some of the governments overthrown were democratic, but all of them were vulnerable to being influenced by the US's rival, the Soviet Union. In Southeast Asia, US puppets didn't last long. The new South Vietnamese government would lose to the north, and US-backed General Lon Nol of Cambodia would rule for only 5 years. But in Latin America, US coup governments established brutal dictatorships, setting back democracy for a generation. Do you agree with our picks? Check out this other recent clip from WatchMojo, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.
So I shared that with you just so you have a history of coups, some of the stuff, a little shorter than what I would do and stuff. I think that some of the stuff you're seeing changing history right now, trying to say things are coups, I don't believe that's actually vetted yet. And so I'm just going to go back to the definition here one more time. I think it's important that everybody understand that there just are some definitions with this, and all I'm promoting for you is you might want to educate yourself just so you understand what these words mean, because sometimes these words can be used inappropriately, and then sometimes these words are exactly what they mean. So a coup d'etat, also called a coup, is the sudden violent overthrow of an existing government. An existing government. An existing government. Now, in political science, the term coup refers to the illegitimate overthrow of a sitting government, usually through violence or threat of violence. Now, in political science terms, it's the illegitimate overthrow of a sitting government. Now, the chief prerequisite for a coup is control of all or part of the armed forces, the police or the other military elements, but unlike a revolution, which is usually achieved by specific political groups or large number of people, etc., a coup is a change in power from the top that merely results in the abrupt replacement of leading government personnel. And that's why I think it's very important to understand what is sitting government at the moment and what is projected to be sitting government after the 20th, and what was sitting government starting back in 2016. So there are some pretty tight definitions that I just think people should educate themselves in history and try to understand. Now, for me, I have a very, very specific wheelhouse, and that's what I basically want to make sure you understand about what I'm trying to help the public understand and try to decrease the fighting, help prevent the violence, because I think that a ballot is actually a historical document. I'll say it again. If we were to come across FDR or JFK or Abraham Lincoln presidential ballots, everybody in the world, museums would be scrambling for them because they'd be priceless. And of course, ballots and the election information is supposed to be held for inspection for 22 months. These things are literally historic artifacts. They're very important to history. And that's why I say, I think really the only way to make sure people don't fight, because part of all of this is just getting people to fight. When you start calling each other names, or people get out in the streets and start going to fisticuff, when this group infiltrates this group and this group infiltrates this group and things happen, it's all about emotion. So I'm saying probably the best way to take the emotion out of every bit of this is let things that have no emotions, machines, take a look at these things. And that's why I've proposed what is called a combination of computer vision, right? It's how they actually make parts on an assembly line. They're only looking at exact things with exact definitions. It has no emotions about it. Combined with machine learning, doing it at a high speed and learning as you go to compile the results and understand what it means, along with artificial intelligence to understand the different variables in it that might be able to understand the outcome, right? Or to make the outcome more closely defined. That is what I propose needs to be done with the physical ballots, and here's what my proposal is.
With mail-in ballots being the most contested part of this recent general election, let's take a look at the ballot as a simple piece of paper. Paper has memory. If a ballot was mailed, there will be folds throughout the paper. Physics say that once the paper is bent, it can never go back to its original shape. Our systems can detect this. While looking at the paper ballots through our systems, we're not only able to tell was the ballot actually folded and mailed, but we're also able to track, did it go through the postal system and get accounted for? While looking at these ballots, we can look closely at the votes, and we can tell whether the vote was cast by a human hand or a machine. The human hand marking the oval leaves telltale signs of human dynamics. However, if the oval was filled in by a machine, it looks totally different under computer vision examination. Besides, there should be no ballots with already filled in votes. These are just a few of the things that can be detected in the paper that is the ballot. And remember, the paper is a piece of code as well. If that paper is misprinted or misaligned, it will force the voting system to ask for adjudication. Adjudication means somebody, an administrator, takes a look at the ballot and then they decide what the voter intent was. This is a potential area of deception. In the end, everything begins with the paper ballot long before it gets into the voting machine. The paper ballot is the actual historic artifact of exactly what the voter intended to do.
So the key point here, okay, the key point here is we're dealing with something physical. That's a piece of paper. When it comes to voting, we've been here before. It's just kind of like hanging chads. Remember, this happened in the Bush versus Gore, or the Gore versus Bush issue, but it was done by humans. And let's just say you had three Bush trying to confirm and three Gore trying to confirm, and they're trying to debate, was that Chad actually pushed, or was it the ruffling of paper that popped out that little insert? That's where the human element is involved. What I am suggesting is put the machines in, and all they're looking at is what is defined as filling in the oval, and was it done by a human hand or was it done by a machine? Of course, if it was done by a machine, it shouldn't be allowed because that's not how they're done. And so this is all part of any process. It's probably done in every single election, and every single election looks at kinematic artifacts in the human state, meaning they rely on eyes and they get people together and they debate over it. But if you actually just take machines and put them in, and it's a very hard set of rules. The rules are really very simple to understand. It is not about technical coding. Is this the proper ballot for this voting area? That's very simple. A ballot has a defined image that's the official ballot. That's number one. Second thing is you're looking for things in that ballot that are supposed to be there by law. Does it have all the correct markings, all the correct codes, all the correct layout? That's what a machine can tell you. The third thing that a machine can tell you, was this ballot printed in a way, if it's correct, meaning it's the legal ballot, it is in the right format, but was it printed in a way to work properly with the machines so it could be recorded properly? That's my analogy of the bad dollar bill going into a candy machine. Then, was it done by a human hand? Did a human fill it out? Because humans are supposed to vote with black or blue inks or whatever, and you can still do it with Sharpie and it will read it, by the way. Or was it printed? There shouldn't be any printed ones in it. Then you hear things about like the kinematic fold, which is one of the kinematic artifacts. A kinematic fold is, this paper is basically supposed to have been mailed. Was it folded? And was it mailed? And in that process, did it go out to a voter? Did the voter open it up? Did the voter look at it? Did the voter fill it in? Did it go back to the process? Now, I described about 8 different items in there of the fold because all of them are detectable. Open once, open twice, open multiple times. Folded by hand, folded by machine. All these things are detectable. So what I'm suggesting is kind of, let's Rosie the robot it, or Robbie the robot it. Always use logic only. Let's put our Mr. Spock on. Let's not be emotional about this. Let's let the machines do it. And that way, whatever the machines find is what's real. I think everybody questions voting machines. Everybody questions distant servers. Everybody's questioning this. And I think it's important for the healing of our nation, with no regard to what side of the process you're on, that America needs to understand what happened. How did it happen? And I think that begins with the ballot. I think, in my opinion, and I could be wrong, I could be arrogant, or I could be naive. But I believe if America and the voters had absolute confidence that everything was checked, not little samples here, not little samples there, but just everything was checked, maybe just starting with one state, maybe starting with multiple states, then I think, just like we interact with machines every day that confirm things, like try paying the wrong toll and see if you get through the machine. Try seeing if you can board an airline with a phony ticket, right? There are checks and measures all over the place to confirm things are authentic the right way. So I'm suggesting that maybe the single greatest part of healing our nation and the healing of the world is to just provide the answers. I believe all logical, ethical human beings that just want peace, whatever it is, I think all parties could possibly accept the forensically documented exact results of what happened to that physical artifact and what did the voter themselves intend. So for me, it's not about coup d'etats, self-coups, revolutions, all this other stuff that we've been seeing now, and frankly, that's been going on for 4 or 5 years. Maybe it's time to set aside the rhetoric, the opinion, the theory, well, this person controls that website, so they're bad, or this person controls that website, so they're bad, or this person sits on a Wikipedia and they edited it and did it wrong. Humans are fallible. Humans are opinionated. I do think the only way we save our incredible republic is to allow a non-biased, simple, mechanically driven audit of what is the intent of the voter. And with that, I thank you. I ask you to go dig out there, do some education on yourself. Words matter right now. All words matter. And trust nothing you hear. Don't trust me. Go look it up for yourself. That's what I am encouraging you to do. I love every part of you. Ethan asked an incredible question. Aren't machines part of the problem? Ethan, here's what I'm saying. And I'm very glad you brought that up. All that happens in this process is a scan is made at the exact resolution these machines took it in at. That's parity. So it's basically an exact digital forensic duplicate of the ballot. Everything else was hardwired before the election, before you or I heard or saw any results, right? Any results. That means the printing of the ballot. Those were done and hardwired. They have form, substance, and rules. And so you take that ballot and the computer understands what it is. And then the other things are very simple, right? There is either a fold or there's not. There is either a human dynamic or there is not. Those don't take opinions. Those are just machines. And basically understand how this is done is you pre-teach the machines. We've already taken vast swaths of age and groups and peoples, copies of ballots, and filled in the circles, filling them all up on the page mechanically and otherwise. And the system learns to understand what's handwriting, what's a human, what's a gel pen, what's an ink pen, what's a roller pen, right? What's a Bic pen, what's a pilot pen, what's a Sharpie, etc. And then it just does its thing. And it's truly that simple. We're working hard. I do believe scan the ballots is the only way. People are saying leave Facebook. I'm here to communicate with you, period, right? I'm here to communicate with you. I try to keep it simple. Yes, I have jumped. I'm on Parler. I'm on Telegram. I'm on Gab, which is kind of hard, right? And you heard this part last month. When are you going to do this checking? That's a really good question. But you know, we're living this roller coaster. It seems like it's been a long time. It's actually been a very short window. You just have to understand the legal process. There are steps and procedures. And if you don't follow steps and procedures, it's not allowed as evidence. That's it. And so all I'm trying to do is just educate you, educate you, educate you, educate you. That's it. Take care. Prepare for the worst, right? Expect the best, but prepare for the worst. And whatever side you are on, it does not matter to me. What matters to me is be human, be civil. Remember, we're all in this together. There will be this can't, in this particular one in history, it can't occur without many, many millions of people feeling hurt or feeling set aside. It just can't help but not be that way. But I don't believe cutting off where we all now can talk today. How wonderful is that? We can have these dialogues. I don't believe in shutting that down. People should be able to debate these things and should be able to learn and educate. So take care of yourself. Love you all. I'll try to give you any updates I can, but remember, hashtags are scan the ballots, hashtag show us the ballots, hashtag kinematic artifacts, hashtag never mailed, don't count, no vote, no fold, right? Or even you can put in 42 US 1974, which is the code that this is under, that it's your stuff. But I'm just trying to get you up to speed, and I want to try to, if I can bring some peace, that's it. That's it. If I can bring some peace, because everybody, it does not matter what side you're on, everybody is freaking out about this. Everybody's freaking out about this, okay? Scan the ballots, share the hashtag. We're all in this together. Let's see what happens. Take care. Bye-bye.